Yes, people, welcome to the Ratcave and welcome to Matt Powell from Reloop and my boy Jimi Needles, who's become quite the regular up in my Ratcave. Right, so we are here today to look at the brand new, well, newish Reloop RP-8000 MK2 turntables and the Reloop Elite. So I got Jimmy in, obviously being the mix meister, the scratch man, the
thank you.
turntable monkey, and obviously Matt is the brains behind the whole setup. He knows all the answers to.
He's the guru.
Yeah, all the answers to your questions, which you'll no doubt have. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to step out and just let these boys crack on. So yeah, as long as you boys are happy,
Let's hit it.
let's have it.
Okay, thanks, Radsy. Yes, as you can see, we've got the Reloop Elite series set up in front of us. This is made up of the RP-8000 MK2 turntables and the Elite mixer. This is all new. The turntable has been out a few months. The mixer has only just landed in the UK. Yep. First things first, Jimmy, welcome. I'm going to let you have a little go, see what you think, and then we'll have a chat afterwards and look at some of the features.
Let's go. Cool.
Now it's time for our wrap-up. Let's give it everything we've got. Ready? Begin.
Cool, nice one. Thanks very much. So that was the Elite and RP-8000 MK2 in action from my man Jimi Needles. First and foremost, the faders. 2 up faders, 1 cross fader, that's all you need. Point of note, these are mini inner fader pros, all 3 of them. So the cross fader and both line faders.
They feel good.
How do they feel, yeah?
Smooth, buttery. I mean, people that are used to inner fader, they're going to love this.
They're the ones, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, cool. What was the cut in like?
You know what? When we first got in the studio today, it was. I was like, "Oh, the cut's a bit off. What's going on here?" Mm-hmm. And as you demonstrated, you can very easily within the mixer itself go into like a setup mode.
Correct.
And you can move the cutting point from what it was, which was half a centimetre, to up to 0.1 millimetres.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. So if we hold down the shift and the back button on the top of the mixer, what we can actually do is get into the fader settings and let you choose the cut-in for the crossfader, channel 1 and channel 2 fader. Brilliant. At the top, at the bottom, crossfader left and right, and adjust the cut actually from as little as, if we look at left cut-in, we've got 0.0 millimeters, which is not even a cut at all, and we can actually extend that right to 3.2 millimeters. So really customizable for whatever you need.
And of course, you've got your, on the front panel here, we have the
you've got your contour adjust on the front panel.
Yeah, exactly. So once you've got that sorted, that's saved, right?
That's saved. That's the fader settings.
I didn't want it at 0.1. I wanted it at 0.2. Okay. That's more kind of what I'm used to, and it just feels incredible. So
So yeah, and then easy enough for the next DJ that may come on after you. They can easily set that on the fly without interrupting the flow of music at all. And like you said, you've got the contour adjust on the front with the reverse hamster switch for each of the individual faders as well. Another little thing I noticed you were doing up here, so we've got our Serato effects section on the top side of the mixer. There's another fader up here which says level depth on it. What were you doing up here? Because we noticed you were scratching with that as well.
Yeah, I had a little play around before you got here, and I'm a big fan of the internal Serato effects on the program. So this is kind of this whole area you can kind of pimp them to the max. And one of my favorite effects is the combo filter, which is actually standard with all Serato DJ Pro users.
That's a combination high pass, low pass.
That's right.
filter.
So when it's at the top, it's high. When it's at the bottom, it's low, and in the middle is nothing.
Yep.
So what I was doing now is I'm merely using it as a kind of crossfader filter, which I've never been able to do before, because usually that's a knob that's configured for that.
Yeah, normally it is, yeah.
On a Serato mixer or
Sure.
a controller. So that was a lot of fun. You know, this is the whole thing with technology. If you include these new features, it just pushes the art form forward, which is great. So I can break it down for you if you like.
Please, yeah, if you could talk us through the process of what you're doing.
Sure, I'm going to put this down. So
Yeah. So there's a sound, completely dry, no effect. So, as you move the fader up, we engage a high pass filter, and as you pull it down, that's a low pass. So, so what it's actually doing is, in effect, is cutting on both sides of the crossfader, right?
yeah, and that's
Like a double cut.
Yeah, you could never achieve that with a
Cool.
with
Well,
a knob, so that's amazing.
That was one of the things that really wanted to do with this mixer. They wanted to really make it user friendly for scratch DJs and give them.
It feels like all the functions have been
Scratch DJs love
scratch
faders,
DJs have
right?
gone right. Yeah, exactly. It just feels, you know, that someone who's gig hardened, you know, play loads of gigs on a mixer and turntables, has used Serato, has gone, you know what, this mixer's got to feature all these things, and it just nails it. This effects unit is strong, really strong.
Cool. So essentially what is happening in the effects section is, like you said, instead of a wet dry knob, it's on a fader. So at the bottom it's dry, and at the top it's completely wet.
Yeah.
We've got our 3 effects assign buttons at the top, which arm the Serato effect that you've got in your chain, and then you've got the on-off button, which lets
And if
you
I
add the
wanted to,
effects.
because I didn't get to check this out, but if I wanted to have all 3 effects playing at the same time, are they all controlled at the same time with the knob?
You'd arm all 3, turn the
Excellent.
effect on, and then that controls
So
all
I could
3 effects
I could do
at the
that
same
crazy
time.
filter thing with a reverb as well.
You could add a reverb on there, you could add
And are they
another echo
post-fader?
on there. They're all post-fader
There we
effects. As well as the on-off, you've also got a hold button, which lets you just flash the effect in and out.
Excellent.
Kind of like a kill switch, or
Yeah.
like a reverse kill for the effects. Moving down below the effects section, we didn't really use any loops right now, but what we've done is we've got a loop encoder with a little LED readout, which tells you what size loop that you're currently active, and then you just tap to load it. It's another feature on here that we're trying to take your eyes off the laptop as much as possible and give you as much information on the mixer.
This is cool. I didn't have a chance to check this out, but now I'm here. This is actually a much nicer way of controlling. I'm a kind of bigger fan of like 1, 2, and 16.
Okay.
So I like to do like a roll on a snare,
Yeah,
when you're
yeah.
mixing into the next record. That to me makes a lot of sense with the LED on here. I wouldn't even have to look at that.
If you're in a booth and you got your laptop off to the side, for example,
Yeah.
it's all the information there.
And that's,
The
I
LED,
mean,
you can see it in
I
the
can
dark
even
club.
tell. I don't even know how to use this, but I'm guessing to arm the loop is a click. Yeah, look, see, it's just so intuitive. It's brilliant.
There's a little
Excellent.
manual loop button as well, so you just tap in and you tap out to do manual loops as well, if people still do that.
They do.
Yeah, so moving down, we've got the effects, the pad section, performance pads. We've got 8 performance pads. Pad modes are underneath. These work in the typical way that a lot of Serato controller pads do. So we've got your hot cues, your loop rolls, slicers and samplers.
Pretty standard stuff.
Exactly. We've also got a section for save flips. So these parameter buttons down here will let you record in your flips, which is like hot cue recording, which you can save up to 8 of those different flips.
Ah.
A nice little feature that these pads actually have as well, on the shift layer, we can actually go into our internal mode transport modes. Now, you were saying earlier that you often, once you've dropped a track, you like to put it into internal
That's right,
mode.
I do. Again, it means going back to the laptop, usually.
No more. So
Ah.
the mode buttons next to the effects here switch it immediately from internal to
Let's
relative mode.
just do a bit of scratching. So if we whack that on internal now, it's completely overridden what I'm doing on the decks, which is perfect. So if I was playing a track, which is when I finish scratching that track in, just whack it on internal mode.
And then no amount of touching the turntable is going to interrupt the track at all.
Brilliant.
Now, what we've also got, an extra layer on here, like I said, if you go into transport mode, we can actually play back. We've got play, we've got cue, we've got nudge buttons, so you can actually use the full internal mode player using the pads from the turntable. A great option if you snap a needle, for example, or something happens with the turntable
it does
and you
happen.
lose an input, then you can still carry on mixing.
Brilliant.
At least in a rudimentary way, instant doubles and everything on the one deck. So while we're in this section here, you can see these mode buttons. I mean, what do? These actually cycle between the internal effects. So as well as the Serato effects section that we've got up here, we've got 4 internal effects.
So the actual unit itself, even if you
these
use
are
it as
hardware
standalone-
effects. You can use it without connecting to a laptop, and you're just using real vinyl. You've got effects built into the mixer. So we've got a filter, we've got a bit crush, a flanger, and a white noise. And a custom mode, and what the custom mode is it's basically a free knob for you to MIDI map to anything else in Serato that you might need.
That, you know what, that's interesting, that, because that could be used for, I mean, the sky's the limit.
People have different needs when they're DJing. So as well as the knob, down here, like I said, where we've got the internal mode, we've got user 1 and user 2. Now what these do is give you a free set of pads. Actually 2 free sets of pads, so you've got more room to map 16 more button
I see this.
functions.
You've got user 1, user 2. Now, so you could have a cue there, a loop here, or
you could. Normally, what you would do, you would use a button that doesn't already exist. So, for example, if you wanted to have your effects on and off on a different button,
nice.
or if you wanted to say you use like reverse mode or the sensor, or you want to engage slip mode or something like that, you can map that to any of these buttons where there isn't already a button for it.
Got you.
The parameters underneath the bottom here, these just change between whatever parameters might be available. So if you're using the slicer, they change the size of the slice, they change the size of the roll when you hold the button down. Same thing for loop rolls, it changes what dimension, what size loop that the roll button is actually going to affect. So there's a lot going on in this mixer. Dual sound cards, so you can have 2 DJs playing at the same time.
So that's 2 DJs with Serato, DJ
2
Pro.
independent Serato setups, meaning that you can go back to back with another DJ and use your own laptop, or if you're changing over in a gig, the other guy can set up his setup.
I think the changeover nightmare has been averted once more.
It's a thing of the past now,
yes,
yeah, exactly. So yeah, just one last thing, just the whole mixer section in the center, we've got it laid out in a traditional mixer layout, gains at the top, 3-band EQ.
Kills?
So these are full kill.
Brilliant.
And we've got a headphone cue fader as well, which is often just a little bit quicker. A lot of scratch DJs don't always use headphones, but if you want to cue something up quickly rather than mess around with cue buttons, you could just
it's
dial
good
it
to
in
have.
straight
I mean,
away.
you know, even a DJ who's not a scratch DJ would find a lot of functionality out of this mixer, I think.
Exactly, yeah, you're right. And like I said, the utility menu settings, just by holding the shift and back button.
Yeah.
Now these are all set on the fly. Like I said, we've got the fader settings, we've got the effects fader control, whether you want it to control all 3 Serato effects or just the one, just effects bank 1.
Yep.
We can change our USB routing, talk over level for the mic. You can actually change the crossover of the high and low EQs. So whether you want the low EQ to pull out a wide frequency range or just the really low frequencies. Velocity sensitive and pad sensitivity. So if you're really heavy handed on the pads, or you like to gloss over them a little bit and you end up hitting them by accident, you can dial the sensitivity down so you've really got to hit them quite hard before they engage. There's a lot of customizing options on the mixer.
That's good. I do a lot of cue drumming and things like that, and sometimes you do, you know, sometimes if you're playing quickly, you do accidentally hit another pad or brush next to one. It's good to have that control, I think.
Great.
And they're nice big pads as well. They're not like they're a lot bigger than the other similar scratch mixers on the market, I'd say, and that's nice.
They're super solid. They don't really flex too much, and with the sensitivity control, then you can just tailor it to your needs. So a quick look at the front panel of the Elite. On the left-hand side here, we've got our mic section. That gives you a mic input volume as well as an echo, and you've got a high and low EQ frequency adjust as well, and an on-off switch underneath for controlling all of your mic output. In the utility settings, there is an option to disable whether the mic output comes from the booth monitors. So if you've got an MC in the booth with you, him shouting into the mic is just going to feed back. So you can actually disable that and make sure it only comes out of the master output. In the center, we've got our fader controls. As I alluded to earlier, we've got a contour adjust for the crossfader, line fader 1 and line fader 2 with reverse switches for each of those. And on the right hand side, we've got our sampler volume. This controls the Serato sampler output volume. And we've also got an auxiliary volume as well, where we can route in an extra line signal on the back of the mixer and control it all from the front panel, as well as your headphone connectors left and right with a headphone split option. So on the back panel of the mixer, we've got our interface on the right hand side. We've got USB-A and USB-B. Like I said, this mixer has 2 internal sound cards, so you can run 2 independent iterations of Serato at the same time. Underneath that, we've got our USB hub, which is ideal for connecting your RP-8000 MK2 turntables. These will auto-assign channel 1 and channel 2, or deck 1 and deck 2, when you open up Serato. They will also power USB devices as well, and it just saves on USB ports going into your laptop if you're running multiple MIDI controllers and things like that. We've got our mic input, which is a TRS input that can be switched to a line or a mic input. On the channel inputs, we've got inputs for phono and line on RCAs with a grounding pin. Same for channel 2. And then in the middle, we've got our session in and out, which is an auxiliary input and a flat level record output. Great for recording mixers or for syncing up to a second mixer for team battles and things like that. Outputs are master XLR and an unbalanced RCA master as well, and jack outputs for the booth. There is a IEC connector and a power on-off switch on the far left side as well. The USB hub on the back of the mixer is mainly for connecting your RP-8000 MK2 turntables. Because they've got built-in MIDI control that needs to be connected to the laptop, that's an extra 2 USB ports. So having it round on the back of the mixer saves the amount of ports that you need to use on your laptop, because you just have one USB cable which controls all the MIDI inputs and the sound card from the mixer. So yeah, let's take a quick closer look at the RP-8000 MK2 turntable and have a quick run through the features and see what we can do with those. So yeah, we've got the RP-8000 MK2 turntable here. You can see it looks like a normal turntable with a twist. So we've got our toner and we've got our pitch and everything, Platter in the middle. But we've got this down the front. Now what do you think of these down the front here?
Oh, for cue jumping to cues, spot on. The location's pretty good. You may know I play in a band and I use the cue pads quite a lot for performance, for pitch bending. And what's interesting is you can kind of get that effect. You can kind of get a keyboard effect, like, you know, going straight down, straight up. And you can also do kind of vibrato effects with the pitch because the Platter's so close to them. So it's very interesting how they've been positioned. It's almost like it's been geared towards scratch DJs.
Very much so, yeah. I mean, the first thing you'll notice is that they're in a line rather than a grid that we normally get on a mixer. Part of that is space, but also part of that is, you know, how does the turntable get used? You know, so I noticed you earlier, you were knocking cue points as you were scratching along. Having everything right there is very intuitive and opens up sort of creative possibilities a bit more.
I think that the more I'd play on them and the more used to it I'd get, and the more efficient and faster I'd get at using these within my DJ sets. Just because they're so well placed, really.
Yeah, so what they do is essentially run the same as the typical pads you might find on a mixer or a controller.
Yep.
We've got cues, saved cues, sampler, pitch play, loops, and loop rolls. Again, with another 2 user modes, just like on the mixer.
So going back to
the
kind of the customization of the turntable buttons, you can now do stuff.
You can do so much more now. In the new versions of Serato, they've introduced independent pad modes. Now, in the past, if you had, say, an RP-8000 and a mixer with pads on it, whatever mode you would select would be replicated on the other unit. Or if you had another pad unit, they would be shared. Now, with independent pad modes, you can have your cues permanently set up here, and if you use a lot of loops as well, you can have loops on the mixer and have access to all of that without having to change between menus all the time.
Which is what you want, really, in a live setting as well.
In a live setting, you want access to the features that you use straight away. Exactly. So all the classic Serato pad modes. This little wheel here is great for navigating your library, your folders and your tracks.
So if you're like me, if I do a festival, I have 80 tracks in a playlist.
Yep.
Chuck them into prepare mode.
Sure.
just have the cursor, make sure it's in there. Next track, scroll down, click.
Absolutely.
Just that simple.
You just highlight the track, click to load, and it will load it into that deck. And that's the same for
That's brilliant.
both sides.
Don't even have to touch the laptop at all.
It's on the mixer as well, but obviously you need to load into a specific side.
Yep.
This being physically on the deck is just way more intuitive.
So you've got the options. You've got the if you go for the completely setup, you've got the options.
It's all there.
It's all there.
Whatever you need to do. If you're more comfortable using the mixer, you've got the option there. If you're over here, if you're busy doing something, you need to load a track in quick because you've got a transition coming up, boom, you've got it straight away on the deck. So the real killer feature of the turntable, as well as all the Serato integration, is the Platter play mode. Now, Platter play mode works independently of Serato, but if you're using it in conjunction, you can get really quite clever with what it can do. So by hitting shift in the pad mode buttons and the pitch reset buttons, what that does is it uses the ultra pitch of the turntable, which is a plus or minus 50% pitch range, and actually assigns a certain pitch to one of these pads.
So what's happening here is we're pressing the buttons, and the kind of reminiscent of the old school Controller 1 by Vestax. It's actually changing the speed of the platter.
It's physically changing the speed at which the platter turns.
So if we put on a note here, let's just try this. So if we just change the pitch on here.
Now that's not re-triggering another cue point. That is a constant tone on the record. And the dial then doubles up is our octave control. So red is the low octaves, green is the middle octaves, and then yellow is the very high octaves. And then using these two buttons at the top of the turntable, we can actually cycle through various scales.
Scales, yeah.
And then the 33 and the 45 button become pitch bends.
I've just noticed something else with the buttons. This has definitely been thought about because I'm doing some kind of like rolls and slides on the buttons.
Yeah.
And if you actually look at the block in which they're all set in, they're actually moving with you, which is actually quite nice.
It's actually damped from the turntable. If you'd be hitting the actual turntable, then that's going to
So you're saying
vibrations.
that if I perform on this, it's actually not going to get picked up on the needle as much as if it was not.
Exactly, yeah.
Brilliant.
It's an extra layer of protection. So if you are particularly heavy-handed or something, it's not going to affect the travel of the needle in the groove.
That's brilliant. And I mean, I'm playing sounds, and you'd hear it if it was going to skip. So let's put some more tunes, another tone on. You know what? A lot of fun could be had if I had a whole day in the studio.
Absolutely. Spend a bit of time with it. Mess around with the
Wow.
scales. There is the option to, again, we're talking about customization. We've got 10 user scales, which you can actually program in your own notes and your own speed. So if you've got
Excellent.
a particular melody, you can program those notes next to each other.
There's just so many options. I mean, you could do
Great,
it that
like you
way.
said, you play in a band
yeah.
as well, so
Yeah.
absolutely great for that. You've got the readout on the top, which tells you
I can become a real musician now.
tells you what note you're actually playing, so you can play along. Someone gives you the root note of a chord,
Exactly.
and you can mess around within that.
Wow.
Super
There's
cool.
a lot here.
Yeah.
I've never seen such an integrated Serato, integrated turntable for Serato. I don't think there's been such a thing actually.
It's a one of a kind. I mean, it says up here it's a hybrid turntable instrument, and that's exactly what it is.
Pretty much what it is. Yeah. I'm blown away, and just for the people at home, like the build quality of this turntable is rugged. It's robust. It feels expensive. It doesn't feel like I'm going to, if you drop it down a stairs, you probably break it. But like if you dropped it in a flight case, pretty sure Ratsy's having a great time here.
It's like Jimi Needles test.
Didn't pass. It didn't pass. So you were really putting this thing through its paces earlier. What do you think of the build quality? How's it feel in your hands?
Exceptional. I think a lot of scratch DJs, when they try out a set of decks, they'll do the older Platter wobble test, and there's none. It's pretty solid. Really solid build quality throughout. Even the buttons feel like they've they don't feel cheap. They feel good, man. You know, I could play on these quite heavy-handedly, and they're not going to break. Everything is where, you know, on a classic deck, everything's where you expect it to be, but it's just been pimped out with all these mega integrated Serato features, which is the best thing.
While we're talking about the actual build and the hardware side of it, a couple of unique features that we've got on here are actually the torque and the brake adjust. So the brake adjust, pretty self-explanatory, but it
so you get a wind down effect there, isn't it?
Exactly.
So, yeah. So you can turn the motor off and do that, but that's probably a better way to control it.
So good point. So turning the motor off, yes, will kill the speed of the platter.
Yeah.
This turntable actually has two outputs, one phono and one line output.
Right.
Now, the normal phono output of a turntable is much quieter than that of, say, a CD player. So, which is why we have dedicated phono inputs on a mixer. And what that does is it boosts the signal to the same level as a line.
Yep.
So you connect phono to phono, and that'd be fine. If you were to connect a phono to a line input, it'd be far too quiet, and you wouldn't be able to hear anything.
Right.
Because this has a line input built into it, you can connect this turntable to any auxiliary line input on a mixer amp. A lot of 4-channel mixers will only have 2 phono inputs.
That's right, yes.
So if you want to connect a third turntable or have it on one of the outer channels that doesn't have a phono input, you can plug the line output of the turntable into that line input of the mixer. Killing the power of a turntable will kill the sound, because the line output requires a phono stage, which is electrically powered. So if you kill the power to it, you're going to kill all the sound. Coming out of phono, it's not running through any electronics, so the needle's still going to pick up all the sound.
Kids, do not do the wind down effect on the motor, because it will cut the audio.
Normally, yes. Like I say, we've got the brake adjust for that, but actually, really thought about that, and they've actually put a main power switch on the back of the turntable, which runs the phono stage. So you can actually still do the wind down,
so that's
but it's worth pointing out that if your turntable doesn't have a switch on the back and you're running out of a line output, killing the motor is going to kill the power and kill the sound as well, which is why we also put the brake adjust on there. The dial next to it is for torque. Now, torque is the power at which the platter moves. Similar to how fast a race car might pull away on a track, it's how strong the motor turns. Now, what that relates to is start-stop speed, as in start-up time, but also how quickly it regains its platter speed when you do things like touching it, so if you're mixing and things. High torque is often preferred by scratch DJs. Mixing DJs often want a little bit less torque because they like to play with the platter and adjust the speed when they're beat matching.
But again, as we've kind of realised with this turntable, there's so much customization to be had that you can go in there and you tweak it how you want.
Exactly. Like I said, multiple DJs can jump on this turntable and use it for their particular way of DJing, all on the fly without having to kill the sound or anything.
I was going to say, lastly, to kind of wrap up the deck itself, I think there's nothing really on the market that's kind of even closely.
It's pretty unique.
Yeah. It's a dedicated Serato turntable.
It's an official Serato accessory. There's no mapping. It's plug and play with Serato DJ Pro. As you said earlier, it says it on the top of the unit.
Definitely one of a kind. And another thing that I wanted to point out for the scratch DJs or even the mix DJs, we mentioned it briefly on the mixer. Actually, there's an internal shift function for Serato. So when you're done scratching, you want to drop in the internal mode.
Yep.
You can actually change the pitch if you map it, which is an easy thing to do, on internal mode. So if you're like, when you do that thing when you mix and it's like 0.8% out, and you're like, oh, I've got to go onto the laptop. Again, it just means that you can just even press the reset button and it'll go back to 0.
Yeah, so you're absolutely right. Every physical function on the turntable, including the start-stop buttons and these dials here, actually all send MIDI note data. So you can MIDI map all of these functions in Serato. So absolutely with the internal mode, that's a great point. What we did earlier is we switched the mode to internals. We might have plus and minus nudge buttons on the mixer, but if you want to physically change the pitch to something else, rather than go on the laptop, we can just hit the MIDI learn feature in Serato and map.
2-second job.
Exactly.
And then you've saved yourself a world of touching a laptop.
Then you've essentially got yourselves a MIDI controller with a mixer that also happens to be a turntable as well.
Fully integrated.
Yeah.
I like it.
So we'll have a quick look around the back panel. Like I said, we've got twin outputs. We've got phono and line. Other turntables have this on a switch. What the RP-8000 MK2 has is 2 simultaneous outputs. So you can output at phono and line level at the same time. Why would you do that? Well, you can get clever by plugging it into 2 mixer channels and putting effects on to the left and the right and things like that. Or you can connect a single turntable to 2 mixers if you have a complicated multiple mixer battle setup, if you're doing team battles or things like that. We've got the USB in and out. Now we've got USB out, which obviously controls the MIDI control. The USB in is for daisy chaining one turntable to the other. So if you're not using the Elite that has the dedicated hub around the back, you can connect turntable 2 into turntable 1, and then turntable 1 connects to your laptop, again saving ports, and you can daisy chain up to 4 turntables that way. A little side note, it does actually output USB power as well, so if you need a handy place to charge your phone, you can stick it in the back of the turntable. Is a nice little feature. So that's been the Elite setup. That's the RP-8000 MK2 turntables, the Elite mixer. Does it get the Jimi Needles seal of approval?
Sure does.
Nice one.
It's to conclude, I think it's a really clean scratch mixer, good club mixer. The integration with the turntables there's nothing else on the market like it. It's incredible. I love how it taps into the functionality of the program itself. I think a lot of mixers nowadays forget that. They try and whack on their own gimmicks and stuff. This is like a dedicated Serato DJ Pro setup. I love it. It's brilliant.
Cool. Thanks very much.
All right then, fellas. I think that was pretty bang on walkthrough. Like I learned a lot from the setup just by sat in the corner listening. Jimmy, as always, mate, smashed it. And Matt, thank you very much. So, guys, this whole setup, you can buy it all together, or obviously you can buy it all separate. We've got all of this in stock at DJKit right now. So feel free to give us a call if you got any of your own questions about the setup. And come down and grab one now. Thanks again, boys. Matt, nice one. And Jimmy, always a pleasure, mate. Peace out, guys.